They blew out the candles without me in the house I was still paying for. My name is Hannah Porter. I'm 31, and last Sunday I found out, in real time, that I'm not part of my own family anymore. The video played automatically while I was scrolling through Instagram. 10 bright candles, pink balloons, laughter echoing through the same living room where I'd spent every Christmas since childhood. My niece Ellie leaned over the cake, cheeks puffed, surrounded by everyone I love. My father, my sister, my aunt, every single one of them smiling. Everyone, except me. No text, no call, not even a "wish you could be here." Just a party happening inside the home my money was quietly keeping alive. If you've ever seen something that made your stomach drop, that moment when you realize you were never part of the picture, you'll understand what that silence felt like. And if stories like this resonate with you, subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Sometimes, sharing your story is how you remind yourself you still matter. At first, I tried to believe it was a mistake. Maybe they'd forgotten, maybe the invite got lost. But when I called my sister, she sounded breathless, busy, happy, the soundtrack of a life I'd been underwriting. "Oh, Hannah!" Yeah, the party. Space was tight. I could hear the music in the background, the laughter, the sound of children running. "Tight?" I asked softly. "There are 30 people there." "Well," she said, her voice turning brittle, "we just had to keep it small." Small. That word hit harder than it should have. I hung up and called my father next. His voice came through thick with drink, cheerful and careless. "You should have seen the cake, Hannah. Ellie loved it." "I saw it," I said quietly. "Online." A pause, then a sigh. "Sweetheart, don't make this a thing. You help out, and we appreciate that. But you're not really family in the way that matters for these things." There it was, simple, unflinching, final. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there, the phone still warm in my hand, listening to the quiet of a house I suddenly realized was no longer home. The walls felt different that night. The same photographs, the same furniture. But none of it felt like mine anymore. And somewhere deep inside that stillness, something shifted. Not rage, not heartbreak, something quieter, steadier. The kind of silence that doesn't mean defeat, it means change is coming. The house was silent that night, too silent. Even the refrigerator seemed to hum softer, like it was afraid to interrupt the truth that had just settled in. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone still in my hand, replaying the conversation over and over. My father's words echoed in the quiet. "You're not really family in the way that matters." It was strange how calm cruelty could sound when it came from someone you loved. It didn't even shout. It just stayed. The next morning I woke before sunrise, eyes burning from a night that never really turned into sleep. The coffee maker sputtered to life, filling the room with a bitter smell that didn't feel comforting anymore. On the table, my laptop blinked with a reminder. Mortgage payment, $2,400 due tomorrow. For 18 months, I'd been sending that money, every first of the month without fail. It wasn't charity, it was survival disguised as duty. Every transfer had felt like a way to keep my family close, a way to matter. Now, the number glowed on the screen like an accusation. I opened my banking app out of habit. My thumb hovered over the send button. My reflection stared back from the glass. Tired eyes, quiet disappointment. How many birthdays had I missed to make these payments? How many dinners skipped, promotions delayed, apartments I couldn't afford, all to keep a roof over people who didn't even want me under it? I thought of my niece's laughter in that video, the candles flickering across faces that didn't miss me. Then I heard it again, my father's voice, unbothered, unapologetic. "You help out, and we appreciate that." Something in me clicked, soft but final. I scrolled to the settings page and opened the automatic payments tab. Autopay on. The tiny switch glowed blue, waiting. It felt almost ceremonial, like a curtain closing. My hand shook slightly as I tapped it. Autopay off. A small gray banner appeared, recurring payment canceled. That was it. No sound, no thunderclap, just silence. Pure, steady, unthreatening. For a moment fear crept in. What would they say? What would they do when the payment didn't arrive? Then something unexpected replaced the fear. Relief. A quiet, unfamiliar kind of peace. I picked up my phone and typed a message to my father. Effective immediately, I'm stopping the payments. You have 30 days to make new arrangements. No apology, no explanation, just truth. I hit send, and before doubt could crawl back in, I blocked his number, then my sister's, then my aunt's. One by one, the channels closed like doors that had been left open too long. The apartment felt different afterward, not lighter exactly, but honest. Every sound belonged to me again. The creak of the floorboards, the ticking of the clock, the whistle of the kettle. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone else's approval to feel whole. I poured myself a cup of tea. The steam rose slow and soft, curling like a promise. My hands were still trembling, but I realized they weren't from fear anymore. They were from release. Outside, the city began to wake. Cars passed, people hurried, life moved on. But in that small kitchen, I sat still. Not the forgotten daughter anymore, not the family's lifeline, not the wallet with a heartbeat. Just me, breathing. Finally free enough to decide what came next. The peace didn't last long. It never does when money is the glue holding a family together. 2 mornings after I turned off the payments, my phone started vibrating on the kitchen counter. Once, twice, again and again, until it sounded like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. I didn't have to look. I already knew. Dad, Sarah, Aunt Margaret, all the people who had gone silent for months suddenly remembered my number. The first text came from Sarah. "Hannah, what's going on?" Dad said the bank didn't get the payment. "Please tell me this is a mistake I didn't answer." 5 minutes later, "You can't just stop. He'll lose the house." "Are you really doing this over one party?" I turned the phone face down. The kettle whistled. The tea tasted different that morning. Not bitter, not sweet, just mine. By afternoon, the tone shifted. Dad's voice came through my voicemail, thick with self-pity and alcohol. "Hannah, please, don't do this." I said things I didn't mean. We were just having fun that day. Don't let pride ruin everything. Pride. That was the word he'd always used when I refused to carry his mistakes. It was what he called self-respect when it no longer served him. That night, I muted my phone. I let the messages pile up, one notification after another, a chorus of guilt I didn't audition for. By the weekend, the storm had gone public. A post from Sarah appeared on Facebook. "Some people value money over family." My sister decided to stop helping our father because she was upset about a party. "Please pray for him," hundreds of likes, dozens of comments. "That's heartbreaking. She'll regret it when he's gone. How can a daughter be so heartless?" I scrolled through them slowly, not angry, just fascinated. The version of me they built was unrecognizable, a villain painted with half-truths and pity. Lucas called that night. His voice was low, calm, the way it always was when my world tilted. "They're dragging you online," he said. "Do you want me to say something?" I looked at the phone, at the reflection of my own face in the dark screen. "No," I said. "Let them. They need the performance. I'm done playing my part." He was quiet for a moment. "Then write your own story," he said softly. The next day, Aunt Margaret left me a voicemail. "Your mother would be ashamed. Family takes care of family. That one hurt differently." Mom had been gone for 5 years, yet they kept using her voice like a ghost key to every door they'd slammed shut. I turned off my phone again. For the first time in days, I slept. But storms have many shapes, and this one wasn't finished. On the 12th day, Lucas sent me a message. They started a GoFundMe. You might want to see this. I hesitated before opening the link. There it was, a picture of Dad in front of the house, Sarah beside him, eyes red and dramatic. The caption read, "Our father, a hard-working man, is losing his home after being cut off financially by someone he trusted. Please help us save the house our mother loved. No mention of the 18 months I'd paid. No mention of the $43,200 that had kept their lights on. Just a carefully written plea, polished, pitiful, and false. Comments flooded the page. Praying for you." I donated what I could. Family should stick together. I closed the laptop before the bile could rise. Later that evening, Lucas called again. "You could expose them," he said. "Show receipts. Post everything I thought about it, the bank statements, the transfer logs, the digital proof of everything I'd done quietly while they celebrated without me. But then I remembered my mother's voice, faint but steady in my memory. The truth doesn't need to shout, Hannah. It just needs to survive. So I whispered back, "No. Let them build their story. The truth will still be standing when it collapses." He exhaled softly. "That's my girl." The next morning, another voicemail. This time, smaller, a child's voice. "Aunt Hannah? It's Ellie. Mommy's phone died, so I borrowed Grandpa's. Why won't you help him? Did I do something wrong?" My breath caught. For a moment, the kitchen blurred. I sat down, holding the phone like it might shatter. "Sweetheart," I whispered to the empty room, "you did nothing wrong." It was cruel, I thought, to turn a child into a messenger. But that's how guilt works when truth refuses to play along. I didn't know it then, but that message, that trembling little voice, would be the beginning of something else entirely, not another storm. Something quieter, stronger, the start of healing, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. The voicemail from Ellie lingered in my mind long after the sound faded. That small voice, unsure, trembling, innocent, had done what all the shouting and guilt couldn't. It cracked something open inside me. For hours I sat in the kitchen replaying it. "Aunt Hannah, why won't you help him? Did I do something wrong?" I couldn't delete it. I couldn't answer it. I just sat there, staring at the wall while the evening light slipped lower and lower until the whole apartment looked bruised with shadows. The next morning, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something told me to pick up. "Hannah!" It was Ellie. Her voice even smaller this time. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "you shouldn't be calling from someone else's phone." "I had to," she said quickly. "Mom says Grandpa's going to lose the house and it's your fault." The words landed like stones, not because they hurt, but because I could hear how carefully someone else had placed them in her mouth. "Ellie," I said, keeping my voice steady, "do you know what a mortgage is?" "Not really. It's money people pay every month so they can live in their home. For a long time, I helped your grandpa pay for his." "You did?" "Yes," I said quietly, "for more than a year." "Then why did you stop?" I hesitated, because he said something that hurt me. He said I'm not really family, that I only matter when I give money. The phone went silent. I could hear her breathing, small and uneven. "That's mean," she said finally. "It was," I agreed, "but I'm not mad at you, sweetheart." "None of this is your fault," she sniffled. "I wanted you at my birthday. I asked Mom, but she said you were too busy." My throat tightened. "I wasn't busy. I just wasn't invited. That's not fair." "No," I said softly. "It isn't." There was a long pause. Then she whispered, "Can you help him anyway, even if he was mean?" I closed my eyes. I wish I could fix everything, Ellie. But sometimes when grown-ups make mistakes, they have to face them on their own. That's how they learn. She didn't speak for a while. Then, in the smallest voice, she said, "I love you, Aunt Hannah." "I love you too, sweetheart," I whispered. When the call ended, I sat there for a long time, phone still pressed to my chest. The world outside kept moving. Cars, voices, life. But inside, everything had gone still again. Only this time, it wasn't despair. It was sorrow. The kind that carries love inside it, the kind that refuses to turn into hate. 15 minutes later, my sister called. I didn't want to answer, but I did. "How dare you?" she screamed before I could speak. "How dare you tell Ellie that Dad said you're just a wallet?" "She's 10 years old, Hannah. She was crying." "Then maybe you shouldn't have told her I'm the reason Dad's losing the house," I said quietly. "You put her in the middle, Sarah. You used her. She wanted to talk to you. Because you told her to feel guilty for something she doesn't even understand." Silence. Then, through the static, I could hear her crying. "Dad needs that money," she said between sobs. "You don't understand how bad it's gotten." "No," I said gently. "You don't understand how much I've already given." There was a pause, heavy, resentful. "You're cruel," she hissed. "No," I said softly. "I'm awake." I hung up before she could answer. After that call, the apartment felt different again. Quiet, but not empty. It was the kind of quiet that follows a storm when the air is finally clean. Lucas came over that evening with takeout. He didn't ask questions. He just listened while I told him about Ellie's call, about Sarah's rage. "She's a child," he said finally. "They shouldn't drag her into this." "I know." He leaned closer. "You did the right thing, Hannah. You protected the only innocent person in this mess." I wanted to believe him, but part of me still ached, not for my father or my sister, but for Ellie, for the way love had become a currency she was forced to count too early. That night, I stood by the window, watching the city lights blink like small promises. Somewhere in that glow, I imagined Ellie asleep, maybe dreaming of a world where adults didn't make love so conditional. The storm wasn't over. I knew that. But something inside me had changed. I no longer wanted to win. I just wanted peace. And sometimes peace begins with a single act of protection, keeping one child's heart from breaking the way yours once did. The days that followed felt like standing in the eye of a storm. The wind had stopped, but I could still feel the pressure, the weight of what was waiting beyond the silence. I didn't answer Sarah's messages. I didn't check Facebook. I tried to move through my days like a normal person. Work, laundry, watering the one houseplant I hadn't killed. But quiet isn't peace when you know something's still moving against you. It's just the pause between waves. On the 7th day, the next wave came. A message from Lucas. "You should see this." A link. Another GoFundMe. I hesitated before clicking. Then I did. The same photo of my father, standing in front of the house I'd kept afloat for 18 months, only now his arm was around Ellie. Her smile looked rehearsed. The caption had been updated. "Our father remains hopeful despite being cut off by his daughter. Every bit helps to save our family home." The donations had doubled. Thousands of dollars raised on the back of a lie. No mention of me. No mention of the $43,200 already gone. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. It wasn't anger I felt anymore, just fatigue. The kind that seeps into your bones when you've been made into a story you didn't write. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. A message request on LinkedIn, of all places. "Hi, Hannah. You don't know me, but I'm your dad's cousin, Jennifer Marsh. I live in Portland. I heard about the house situation. Could we talk?" I almost ignored it. I'd had enough family. But something about her profile felt real. No dramatics, no pity. Just a woman with kind eyes and a career in social work. We met the next afternoon in a small cafe near my office. She was in her 50s, silver hair pulled back neatly, voice soft but steady. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. "I know this must be uncomfortable." I shrugged. "I think I ran out of uncomfortable weeks ago." She smiled sadly. "I wanted to hear your side. Because what I'm seeing online doesn't sound like the man I once knew. And yet, it does." So I told her everything. The 18 months of payments. The birthday I wasn't invited to. The words, "You're not really family." The public shaming. The call from Ellie. Jennifer didn't interrupt. She just listened, her hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. When I finished, she nodded slowly. "That sounds exactly like Robert," she said finally. "He did the same thing to me once. Borrowed $15,000 for a business idea, promised to pay it back. When I asked about it, he called me greedy. We haven't spoken in years." For a moment, I just stared at her. The air between us felt heavier, but somehow cleaner. It wasn't just me. This wasn't new. It was a pattern. A legacy. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "Don't be," Jennifer replied. "I'm sorry it took this long for someone to stop it." Her words hit harder than she knew. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Do you actually want him to lose the house?" I thought about it. About Ellie, about the years I'd spent trying to earn a place in a family that only saw value through money. "No," I said finally, "I don't want them to suffer. I just want them to learn. You can't treat people like a resource and still expect loyalty." Jennifer smiled faintly. "That's not revenge, Hannah. That's correction." We sat in silence for a while, the cafe noise folding gently around us. Spoons against cups, quiet laughter, the sound of a world still functioning somewhere outside our small circle of truth. Before leaving, she handed me her card. "If things get worse, call me. You shouldn't face this alone." I thanked her, meaning it. On my way home, the sky was low and gray, that shade before rain that looks almost silver. I thought about what Jennifer said, about correction. How justice sometimes isn't about punishing others, but about refusing to be punished again. That night, I cooked dinner for myself, something simple but real. Pasta, garlic, a glass of wine. I didn't check my phone. I didn't scroll through comments. Instead, I sat by the window, listening to the soft hum of the city. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like prey. I felt steady. Maybe, I thought, this is what healing actually looks like. Not fireworks, not vindication, just a calm refusal to reopen the wound. Somewhere out there, my father was still posting, still pleading, still pretending. But for the first time, that truth didn't belong to me. Because tonight, the only story I wanted to live was the one where I stopped apologizing for surviving. Rain had started that morning, a thin, steady drizzle that made the world outside look softer than it really was. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee when my phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Margaret. "Please, Hannah, we only need 6,000 more. You have it. I'll pay you back, I swear." 5 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. When I looked through the peephole, I froze. She was standing there, hair unbrushed, eyes swollen, desperation trembling in every breath. "Please," she said when I opened the door a few inches. "Can I come in?" "No," I replied quietly. "We can talk here." Her voice cracked. "We're only a few thousand short. You can save the house. You know what this means to your father." I crossed my arms, holding the doorway like a boundary. "You once told me you were fine without me," I said evenly, "that I didn't need to be at family events." I listened. Tears welled in her eyes. It was anger, Hannah. Don't destroy his life over one stupid comment. "It wasn't one comment," I said softly. "It was 18 months of being treated like a stranger while paying the bills that kept you comfortable. You didn't just take my money, you erased me with it." She blinked, stunned. "He'll lose everything." "No," I said, calm and steady. "He already did when he lost his integrity." For a second, she looked like she might scream, but instead, she just whispered, "You've changed." "I've healed," I corrected. Her lips trembled. "I hope you can live with yourself." "I finally am," I said, and closed the door. At 3:15 that afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Dad's number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me wanted closure. "They took it," he said, his voice hollow. The house. It's gone. I said nothing. Please, Hannah, we can fix this if you just— No, I interrupted gently. You made your choice, Dad. I just stopped funding it. He tried to speak again, but I ended the call. When I poured a glass of wine that night and stepped onto my small balcony, the city was glowing beneath the rain. I thought I'd feel triumph. I didn't. I just felt still. Peace doesn't always announce itself with joy. Sometimes it comes quietly, like the sound of a door staying closed. If you've ever had to walk away from people who only saw your worth in what you gave, then you'll understand this moment. And if you're finding your own courage to set boundaries, I hope you'll like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like these remind us we're not alone when we choose ourselves. I looked at the sky one last time before going in. For the first time in years, I wasn't saving anyone. I was simply letting consequences speak. That night, I realized something my mother used to say, but I never understood until now. Some doors don't close to keep you out, they close to keep you safe. And as the rain kept falling, I whispered to the dark, I'm safe now.